Something told the Magi to take the long way back home, not to go the way they came. What was that? What was it that told them to go to Bethlehem in the first place? What is that that tells you what to do? Have you ever had a thought that has nagged you or irritated you a little bit, that you tried to ignore but found that you couldn't? My friend Kathy told me that one time she was driving in her minivan with 4 of her kids in the car. She was coming down a hill, and the light at the intersection at the bottom of the hill had just turned green. So she was happy that she was going to clearly make it. Right then, a voice whispered, "Slow down." She had no idea why that would be a thing to do. She didn't want to. She wanted to make the light. So she kept going. And again, in her heart, a voice said, "Slow down." So she couldn't ignore it that time, and she slowed down. And as she got into the intersection, bam! She hit the back of a car that was running the red light. If she had not slowed down, if she had been 1 second earlier, the car would have T-boned her right at the spot where her kids were sitting. There are many names that we use for God, many titles that we use. One of them is the term higher power. We call God our higher power. God is a guiding presence that speaks in our life, that directs us. And it's not always a welcome voice. Have you ever had a prompting that you wanted to ignore? Because it wasn't convenient, it wasn't at the right time. It's the voice that says, "Slow down," when you're trying to make the light. One of the ways we know that that voice is not us is that we don't want to listen to it. We're trying to ignore it or avoid it. It's proof that we're not the ones who put it there. One of the things about being human is that we're always free to choose to do what we wish. That's what free will is all about. God can give us some direction, but we're free to take it or leave it. We are not forced into doing what we're prompted to do. But of course, that's the sure path to trouble. And that's what the story of the Magi is all about today. There's no way that they wanted to take the long route back to Persia, that they wanted to take the extra long desert route that had more hills. There's no way. But the prompting that they heard told them that they needed to do that. And that voice had not yet guided them wrong. After all, it was that exact voice that led them to Bethlehem in the first place. So they listened, and they took the long, winding, more difficult route home. Once, Megan, my friend from grad school, and I were in her car. She was driving, and I was riding shotgun. We were going to lunch, and we found a parking spot right in front of the place where we were going. Now, she had lived in the city for 15 years by that point. She'd parallel parked every day. There was no problem with that. But as she tried to parallel park into this spot, she found that she was cranking the wheel the wrong way, like the way you don't do it. She knew how to parallel park, but she was cranking the wheel, and she laughed. "What am I doing?" She pulled back out, evened it up again, and then started again. Same thing. She was cranking the wheel the exact wrong way. She was like, "What?" So she tried one last time. Same thing. She put her blinker on, and she pulled back out into the lane. She said, "My instincts don't want me to park here. My body's not letting me turn the wheel the way that I want to. I'm not going to park here." And we found a spot that was further down the road. I said, "Man, have you ever heard that Carrie Underwood song, 'Jesus Take the Wheel'?" I didn't know that could happen when your hands were on it, but it can. The hard part of these promptings is when they're telling us something that makes life harder. It puts us at a crossroads where we may know I'm supposed to do this, but we don't want to because it's going to complicate things. And if we don't listen, then the consequences are ours to deal with. A woman once told me an incredible story. She said that she had been dating a guy for about 3 years, and they were getting very serious. One of the things that brought them together was their shared love of swing dancing. And so they had been these magic swing dance partners and had so much fun, and everybody thought they were a perfect couple. They had even been talking about engagement, and they had gone ring shopping a couple of times, so they were really serious. But she'd noticed that for the past couple of months, he wasn't treating her very well. Lots of put-downs, lots of irritability, embarrassed her in front of other people a couple of times. She didn't know what that was all about. But one night, they were swing dancing, and in the middle of a fast turn, when she was holding his hand, she jammed her finger, and it really hurt. And she screamed out right away, and he said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I don't know, I hurt my finger." And he said something to her like, "Why are you so delicate? What's wrong with you?" A put down again. She looked down, and her finger started to swell right away. He wasn't very compassionate about it. She went home that night, iced it. The next day, it was even worse. So she went to the doctor. The doctor told her it was broken. How did that happen? Why did it happen? I don't know. Maybe it's not important. But what was important was when she looked down and realized that the finger that was broken was her ring finger. She broke up with him later that week. She couldn't put a ring on her finger from someone who would break it and not apologize. That voice that we hear, that sense, that moment where you realize, oh my, that's called intuition. It's the same word whether you mean it in a religious sense or a secular sense. Intuition. And it's one of the greatest tools in our spiritual toolbox. It is able to go to the places that reason alone can't go. Sometimes reason can't work because we don't have enough information. It goes into the places where emotion can't go, because sometimes emotions are unpredictable, or we're getting flooded by our emotions, and it doesn't help us. Intuition is a sacred sense inside of us that helps guide us. It's how God works through the situations that reason and logic and emotion can't really help us through. I am told that pilots love flying on clear days because it's when you feel the most like a bird. You can look down and you see where you want to land and you can go there. But we have weekends like this one where you can't see a foot in front of your face. It's completely fogged in. And pilots can fly in that too. If they listen to the commands from the control tower and they use their instruments, they can land just as effectively in the fog as if they could see clearly. And that's what we're being asked to do sometimes. That's what the Magi were being asked to do, to be guided by their instruments alone. There was no way for them to see what was right, so they had to rely on the information that was coming from within. So this week, in honor of the Magi, wouldn't it be good for us to kind of start to think about in our life how that voice has operated for us, so that we can strengthen it, so that we can start paying attention to it more? When has our intuition guided us in a way that reason couldn't on its own, or that our emotions wouldn't have been able to help us through? A lot of people will tell me that it comes in very subtle but important ways. Sometimes you might be in a doctor's office and you're getting bad news, maybe about yourself or about someone you love. And you hear a voice that says, "It's going to be okay. We are going to get through this. Don't panic." That's that voice. It's not always telling you what to do. it's telling you not to worry, not to panic. And so this is the gift that we're here to celebrate on Epiphany Day. The voice of our higher power, even when it tells us what we don't want to hear. And that's why the Magi took the long route home. They didn't want to, but how could they not trust that voice? After all, it's what got them to Bethlehem in the first place.